All right, sweet.
There we go. You're all set up.
I'm ready. Yes. To everyone. I know a lot of you guys are online, so this is different. I have a few people looking at me and a lot of people listening to me. So I hope you guys can hear me well. I hope you're able to see the PowerPoint for those of you online. I think it helps as I read off a lot of things, whether it be scriptures or points. I am excited to be up here. I told Nathan earlier, thank you. He has some trust in me to come up here, and he didn't give me even a hard time. Like, hey, what you talking about? He's just like, look, I trust you, brother. Just go with it. And it's such a great feeling. I love sharing. I love speaking. I spent a bit of time on this, and I don't know about anybody else who put together lessons, but sometimes it feels like there's no stopping point. It's like I just can keep going with this and keep adding, and up until the very moment I'm leaving the house, I'm still like, oh, what about, so I had to stop it off. So anyhow, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm jumping back to Exodus 10 a couple of Torah portions ago. I felt it necessary, since we missed last time, to just kind of recap real quick as we continue our story. So Exodus 10 through 17, I believe that's Brother Nathan, and I think it was repentance and forgiveness that you mentioned in this study. Let's see here. The children of Israel were sent from Egypt following 10 plagues. They traversed through the desert by a pillar of fire and cloud. Children of Israel are caught between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army. They passed through the Red Sea. Pharaoh's army could not. They complain, and Yahweh provides sweet water, manna, and quails. I don't know if that's how you spell quails. It looks funny. All right. Children of Israel defeat the Amalekites as Moses keeps his hands up in the air. So that's kind of where we continue. We were going to meet last time, but it didn't work out. But just some bullet points of that Torah. You got Jethro on the scene, Moses' father-in-law, giving him some organizational tips on how to judge effectively. After 3 months from leaving Egypt, they are now arriving at the desert of Sinai. Exodus 19, 5, 6. And he tells them, and now if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all people. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a reign of priests and a set-apart nation. I love these words from our Father. He said, there's the conditions. If you diligently obey my voice, you can be a set-apart nation. And I love it. It's not exclusive to a race. It's not exclusive to a socioeconomic class. He's saying, look, there's a condition if you simply obey me with all your heart. Yahweh commands Moses to call for the people to sanctify themselves for 2 days. The third day, the people asked Moses to speak to Yahweh on their behalf because they heard a little bit his voice. They said, oh, no, you do the talking because this is terrifying. Moses encourages Israel that Yahweh is setting the fear of himself so that they will not sin. He says, guys, it's okay. He's just trying to help you understand his fear. Good morning. So that you will not sin. So he wasn't trying to kill him or anything. Yahweh commands them not to make silver and gold gods. Instead, build an altar on the ground. That's where we left off on the last Torah portion, and we're going to pick up in this Torah. Exodus 21 to 24, I call this Revelation and Restitution, and you'll kind of see why as I get into it. Here's some bullet points to give us a broad perspective of what's going on. Yahweh gives Moses a collection of laws and judgments pertaining to various topics. Most of this section is laws and ordinances and Torah-related items. So you're going to hear a lot about that. Hebrew is topics like Hebrew servants, personal injury, protection of property, social responsibility, justice and mercy, and Sabbath laws. Moses reads the book of the covenant, and the people reply, we will do whatever, kind of like we would do whatever you say. We will do and we will hear, just like you're telling us. Moses built an altar and offers sacrifices. He ascends to Mount Sinai to receive the tablets of the covenant. So that's a broad perspective of what we're covering today in the Torah portion. But I want to get into a little bit. When you're going through 3 chapters, I was thinking about what you went through. Man, you had I think 5 or 6. It was a good portion. When you're going through 3 chapters and you're thinking, what in the world do I go with? Where do I go with that? And you stop at every few verses, like, oh, that's good. I can talk about it. Oh, that's good. And it's tough, but I believe the Spirit really put something on my heart that stood out to me, and I hope it ministers to you as well. Who is the most misunderstood person in the Bible? Who is the most? There's a lot of characters in the Bible. Who is the most misunderstood person in the Bible? I didn't take a poll of America or the world, so I can't give you some hard facts. Asked me that one time and gave me an answer, and I thought it was kind of curious. If you were to answer that question, who would you say? The most misunderstood person of the Bible. God. You haven't thought about it yet? And the answer they gave to me was God, the most misunderstood person. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know how solid the facts are on that, but I thought about that, and there's some validity to that, because most people don't follow him for that reason. They think something different. They think maybe he's like my dad. Maybe he punishes that same way. Maybe he turns a blind eye to suffering. And we have all these thoughts that may be misunderstanding of who Yahweh God is. In this time today, I hope to, what stood out to me as I'm reading, especially the Old Testament, I remember years back when I first started to follow God, and I started to follow Jesus, Yahshua, and I remember loving the New Testament because it started to reveal who Yahweh really is, what kind of things really bother him. Up until that point, I could bring in my culture, my customs, my traditions, my feelings, all my thoughts, and I can just oppose them on him and say, I think he's about the same. But as I read the scriptures, it was shocking and sometimes unnerving when I learned who he was. For instance, I never forget reading when, she always comes up to me. I never forget reading when Moses came to the burning bush. And he comes up to the burning bush with sandals, and he always speaks out of the bush and says, don't take another step. This is holy ground. Take off your sandals. I was like, what? Now, it may not strike you as weird, but for me, I didn't look at God that way. What do you mean I didn't look at him that way? I didn't look at him as someone who was so particular. What do you mean another step? One step? What's a step? I can just take another. He says, no, don't do it. I told you not to do it. And it's really hurting me at this point. I'm like, no, you know my heart. You know how I am. We cool. It's just a big. But I started to learn who he was, and I didn't like some of those things. I thought you was kind of my boy and my homeboy. You understand me? But he's like, no, there's some things that I tell you not to do. Do not do that, or I will kill you. And it was sobering to watch this play out in so many people's lives throughout the scriptures. And he took off his sandals. He's like, I got to do that. But I saw so much sin in my life because I never wanted to see that line. It's always general. It's always vague. Now, I'm sharing that because I misunderstood that person of Yahweh. I was like, oh, I think he just always he knows it's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's not okay. There's some things he seriously says, I don't want you to do that. Who is Yahweh really? What's important to him? What makes him angry? What makes him happy? What is he like? Is he like me? Isaiah 55 says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways, declares Yahweh. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. How could one come to really know him? He says, my thoughts are not like your thoughts. My ways are not like your ways. So it's important for me, it's important for us to continue to imbibe and saturate and lavish ourselves with his word. Because the further I step away from his word, the more I start recreating who he is. I'm constantly sober as I read the Bible. Still, after about 16 years of following him, I'm still like, oh, wow, I forgot about that. And his standard, his truth has not wavered and changed a bit. His love that reminds me that I'm encouraged and I'm blessed, I'm like, oh, I need that. Why? Because the world doesn't teach me that. There's no billboard that's constantly reminding me, if I don't forcefully put this in my life, the world will happily saturate me with a different message. So as I'm reading through this Torah portion, it starts to jump out to me and remind me who he is. I'm like, oh, that's really good to know. This is important to you. This makes you happy. This makes you upset. How can we really know him? Well, we can get into his word. What I'm going to do here is take chapter 21, 23, 24. 21, 22, 23, 24. Chapters 21 to 23, for the most part, are going through a lot of laws. But as I panned out a little bit and started to look at these laws, something else stuck out to me. You see up here, I put up here 2 columns, and I started to see something about who he is and what's important to him. Let's find out what's important to him and how does he handle it as we look at his laws. And verse 21, 12, he says, he who strikes a man, so he's going through all these laws, and I'm just putting some up here. He who strikes a man so that he dies shall, and on the right side you see the consequences, certainly be put to death. What does that tell me? He don't like that. The Cain and Abel situation. Not only does he not like it, this is a list where if you look on the right, it has a lot to do with dying and death. This is intense. Some of these things I would have taken lightly. I'm like, look, it's okay, that's bad, but death, that's serious. This is how he feels about it. Certainly be put to death. Okay, there it is. And 21:14, but when a man acts presumptuously against his neighbor to kill him by treachery, take him even from my altar to die. Sometimes they would go to the altar to plead mercy. He says, if you did that, that's a serious offense to me. I'm serious about loving your brother. That's the kind of message I'm hearing. I'm serious about you not laying an evil hand on him and hurting him and putting him to death, to the point where I would take your life. I'm calling the community to take your life. 21:15, and he who smites his father or his mother, smites his father, okay, smite, that's an old fast, hits his mother or his father, certainly. You see how these certainly, like, there is no doubt about it. You dying today. I don't know how the process worked out. It wasn't like somebody just say, I'm going to kill you, but they had a procession for this. You would go to the elders, and it wasn't like, mass hysteria. But the fact is, you start to get a clue of some of the things that are important to our Father. He wants us to love one another. He's serious about this whole mother and father thing. And that made me rethink. I was like, hold on. I know I've never hit my makes me back up and say, man, is it good? All right. It makes me back up and say, man, he's really serious about this. This not touching your. Now, in our day-to-day, that's more common than it was then. That's more common. You would not even imagine that happening then, but here it's like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, that did happen. It don't completely shock anybody. But back then, and still now, he's like, I didn't change my attitude about it. I still don't like it. But that's how serious it is. And he who, next one, 21:16, it says, and he who kidnaps a man and sells him or is found in his hand, certainly be put to death. Don't like this idea of kidnapping. So you see this social interaction. He doesn't like us to be treating each other wrongly. And he who curses his father or mother, certainly be put to death. Whoa, I never hear about that one. Curses his father or what in the world is that? What does that look like? But if you look, this whole father and mother thing is huge to him. And I like to go over this because for some reason this is what stood out to me. I started saying, wow, this is some important stuff to him. How I raise my kids, I need not be light on that issue if he's serious on it. Oh, it's okay. They just, and I don't think it's talking about just using cuss words, cursing, because when they talked about cursings, oftentimes it wasn't like a cursing word that we associate with, but speaking a ill will upon someone. When Yahshua, Jesus, cursed the fig tree, he simply told it never to bear fruit and die. That was a curse. The disciples said, why did you speak a curse over it? And I wonder what I say in my heart towards my parents. I wonder what I'll allow my kids to say in their hearts or even utter and say, well, that's okay. But Yahweh's like, I'm not okay with that. Oh, well, it's just a kid. I am not okay with that. And this has been a refreshment to me as I bagged up and say, what is he like? He's like, I don't like that. You may think it's okay. Your parents may have thought it's okay. Your culture may approve of it, but I'm going to tell you, I haven't changed. This is very serious to me. There's another passage. However, if the ox, this is talking about a man and his ox going astray. 21:29, however, if the ox was previously in the habit of goring, and its owner has been warned, and he has not kept it confined, so that it was killed, so it has killed a man or woman, then the ox is stoned and his owner is put to death. I thought this is interesting. There's another passage before it that if it happened before they warned them, then there's a different penalty. But if they've been telling you and warning you, and then something happens, then you are responsible for that action. We don't have oxen. I think that's the plural, right? I'm going to say oxes. Is it oxen? Yeah. We don't have oxen, but I think I can make a parallel and back up a little bit and say, if somebody's telling me something that, look, your animal's out of control, your dog or whatever it is out of control, and I'm not keeping that thing in check, I become responsible now. Now, that's one thing for it to happen on accident, but now I'm like, oh, I got to take responsibility for what's going on in my home, in my backyard, or whatever it is. And lastly, do not practice witchcraft. Do not allow a practice of witchcraft. Put them to death, in essence, is what he says there. There's all kinds of different witchcraft, I guess you can call it. We got I don't get into it, like the stars and, palm readings and, but he's serious about it. I remember reading scripture in Revelations that said, don't do nothing with magic. Magic? I think that is cool. I watched YouTube videos on magic, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. But when I read that, I was like, ooh, that's how I feel about it. And I was like, ooh. And he's very clear. It's in the same passage with murderers and all these other people. I'm like, ooh, he's serious about this magic stuff. Let's turn that off, honey. That ain't cool no more. But I still have a desire to want, that's really, like, I don't play with that. Now, I can get into the whys. I can start asking, like, why? Is it really that way? And sometimes we get in trouble as a nation because we're so into our knowledge that our knowledge can sometimes allow us to supersede his command. Well, I don't get why this is important. I think he was doing it for this reason. We'll reason our way out of obedience. And I've done that so many times. I got a degree. We're in the science realm. If you can prove it and you know it, we get it. We know it. They didn't know no better, and so we reason our way out of it. But if he says just flat out, I don't do the magic scene, I don't do the witchcraft stuff, I just need to be like, yeah, what's the worth for it in me? What's the worth to me anyway? Why would I even play around with it? It doesn't add anything value to me. All right, so that's talking about this, and we get a kind of a cool snapshot of what Yahweh is serious about. I remember growing up hearing that you should never say the word hate. I don't know if y'all grew up like that, but hate, oh, no, you don't say hate. You don't say hate. Well, hate's a strong word. That's always what you hear follow, and we should never say it. Now, it's not a biblical teaching, but it's something that's so strong that you're like, oh, that's serious. And we avoid saying hate. But you'll see hate in the Bible. I learned that you can't seriously love something without hating something else. Because there are two sides to one coin. I love my family, so I'm going to hate anything that tries to come against them. The Father loves, I'm backing up saying, what do we get from this? The Father loves brotherhood. He loves unity. So he hates things that push against it. The whole kidnapping, the mother and father fight. You can sense that on the other side. It's because I love you so much and I can't stand anything that's against it. You can't be apathetic and follow him. You have to choose a side, and it's very clear. I'm very exclusive. I love you, and therefore I hate these things that come, you won't be able to see that with Yahweh. But let's look on another side. Let's look at some of the laws that didn't deserve death. Everybody wasn't dying, so we get that scene. But there's some things that he did mention. What about acts not deserving death? There's a few more. Restitution comes up. If you know this word, cool. It's not a word that we use every day, but I didn't know it that well. But restitution, I looked it up, copied and pasted it here. It's the restoration of something lost or stolen to its proper owner. Or number two, the recompense for injury or loss. In a sense, it's simply making things right when something was wrong. So it's the restoring of something lost or whether it was injury or whatnot. In this next section, we're going to start seeing Yahweh's desire for restitution. And I want to talk about that a little bit in a second, but you'll start to see it's not okay that you offended me and you simply say, my bad. That's not okay. He's like, no, there's restitution also. If you're serious about something that was done, he says, I've set up some things that says you need to go back and restore. Here's some of the offenses that you'll see in these chapters. And when a man strive together, there's a fight, and one smites the other with a stone with his fist, and he does not die, here's what he is required to do. He only pays for the lost time and sees to it that he's completely healed. How cool is that if that happens? If we see that nowadays. If you do get into something with a stranger, your brother, whatever, hey, you're responsible for the time he lost. You're responsible paying. It's not just like, hey, dude, I'm sorry about that. First of all, there needs to be that. That's like minimum according to restitution. That's a minimum. But it's, I'm sorry about that, and I will pay for the time you're missing from work, from the things you need to do with your family. That may not be what I'm used to, but I want to give us a glimpse. That's what he sees. That's the way he set it up. He said, this is the way it should be. And we can kind of interpret that and translate that into our lives and see what that looks like. As I was going through this, it sobered me so much because I started to see, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I'm getting excited. I started to see that if I'm serious about what I did and I wronged someone, what I should say is, I'm sorry, and watch this. This is the part that made me, watching what I'm seeing here made me back up and follow up with another question. I'm sorry, and what can I do to make it right? Ooh. You really want to challenge yourself in a relationship. If you really want to try to line yourself up with his will, this is how he looks at it. You start saying, look, I wronged you, but what can I do to make it right? You know, when I get into an argument with my wife, when we're not on the same terms, you know what? That was my bad. What can I do to make it right? See, I'm a servant at that point. I'm like on my knees. She can say anything. And the person I'm wrong, they can say anything. You're showing that, look, not only am I sorry, but I'll do anything because our relationship is more important to me than that thing. And when a man, here's in 21:20, and when a man smites his male or female servant with a rod so that he dies under his hand, he certainly will be punished. Now, one thing you'll notice in this culture is, look, at this female servant dies, but because it's a servant, they have a different system. You know, he's punished, but he's not necessarily put to death. I thought that was interesting, because you'll later hear that that's his property. You can get into that. 21:22, and when the man strive, and they shall smite a pregnant woman, and her children come out, yet there is no injury, how are you going to handle that? I mean, they got rules for everything. He's like, I thought of it all. I got you covered. I'm covering everybody. And you got to love his Yahweh's spirit. He's like, I set you up so everybody's taken care of. You don't got to figure it out. But what if she gives birth prematurely? Because of the struggle that you guys had around her or something, whatever happened. He says the offender must be fined, whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. So the husband decides and the court allows, that's what you got to do. You are at mercy of the husband in the court in that case. But look, what if there is an injury in that case? Then this is where this common phrase comes up. You shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, lash for lash. You know, a lot of people, and this is where the misunderstanding comes in. They'll see that passage, and I've heard this passage interpreted meaning that's why we get vengeance on someone. Eye for an eye. I'm going to get you eye for an eye. And it takes it out of context. It's not saying this is a matter of vengeance. It's simply saying it's a matter of measure of punishment. If it's an eye, you do an eye. If it's a foot, you do a foot. It's not, oh, you pricked your finger, I'm going to kill you. But if there is going to be justice done, it's done in the correct measure. But a lot of people misunderstand that and say, well, that's why we need to get justice, and I'm going to get vengeance, and this is not the spirit that was said in. When a man smites the eye of his female servant and destroys it, let him go free. And if he knocks out his tooth, let him go free. You're free to go if your eye or tooth get knocked out. I'm guessing those are important items that you need, and that's worthy of being set free. But the point is, there is restitution that you must make for what you did. And when a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit is to repay. He is to give silver to their owner, and the dead beast is his. If a man lets a field or vineyard be grazed bare and lets loose his livestock and feeds it in another man's field, he repays the best of his own field and the best of his own vineyard. So he let this field be grazed, and the animal starts eating in somebody else's field. He says, take from the best of your own field. Not just something. My heart can be like, I'm just going to do something. He says, take from the best of what you got and give it to him. Now, it's hard because I have to stop and pause here throughout because we keep hearing about beasts and fields, but I want to try to let us see if he's speaking to us today and he gave these, how would he interpret it? Like he'd be like talking about if somebody wrecks your car, if you run into somebody or somebody runs into you and, you're like, oh, I get this now. So he's saying, look, if you got something that belongs to you and this accidentally happened and he starts to eat in another man's field, or I'm trying to find a parallel with us, but you're responsible for taking the best of whatever you have and making restitution with that. So we don't need insurance anymore. We don't need car insurance anymore because everybody does that. You're like, hey, look, if you hit me, you know it. I apologize, whatever else I got to do. When the fire breaks out and spreads to thorn bushes so that the stacked grain or standing grain or in the field is consumed, he who kindled the fire is certainly to repay. You get the idea. You're going to have to repay for what you did. And when a man entices a maiden who is not engaged in lies with her, he shall certainly repay the bride price for her to be his wife. I like this right here. This is huge because you hear such strong patriarchal culture back in this time. But one thing Yahweh does in his laws, he will make sure the women are protected. Because in this time, if you didn't have a man, you didn't have status. You couldn't buy property, a lot of things you couldn't do. So he says, look, if you're going to do that, all right, you're going to do that, you're going to take a maiden, a virgin who's not engaged and lay with her, you need to marry that woman. You need to pay that price and you need to marry her. He goes on at another point saying, and if you choose not to, I don't think I put this up here, but if you choose not to, you need to take care of her. You need to make sure she had all her food taken care of, all her shelters taken care of. I love it. What a wonderful, loving God. If you're going to choose to make that mistake, you better take care of that woman. And so he's not this God who's like, I'm just all about the men. You always hear about Joseph and Benjamin. And what about the women? He's like, I ain't forgot about the women. I'm taking care of all my people. But that's another study, and there's more passage on there other places. He who slaughters to a mighty one, which means another God, except to Yahweh alone, should be put under the ban. I looked that up in another translation and talked about being under destruction or something. I didn't understand what that looks like. It's just not good. So that's the restitution you're going to have to make if you're going to slaughter to another God. Now, we have a lot of this is a whole other lesson. There's a lot of other gods that we have now. I'm doing a study on this right now, and I started to look up, why do we have other gods? What's the point? Well, they look so silly. You carve out these images. I was doing a study on the Asherah pose and Esther and the Easter whole thing and how they got into it. I'm like, who would have this stuff in their house? Why was that so silly? And you'll have these Astarte pose, and they were just, sometimes it was just a piece of trees coming out the ground. Sometimes they would carve it, and it was this bare-breasted woman who was the god you prayed to. And they had others, Molech, different bells. These were the top three, though. And I'm like, why would they do this? But when you start to look into the things that they perform, it was like giving me fertility, giving me prosperity, giving me protection, all these things. And what I'm trying to say is that we may not have those gods, because it's talking about slaughtering to another god. You're offering us to another god. We may not have those gods. But what do we go to for protection? What do we go to for prosperity? Where do we turn for all these things that they created their gods for? Where do I go for those gods? Do I offer myself, my mind, my soul, my strength to those gods? See, because it's easy to look at oxen and all these things and say, yeah, we don't do that. I got it. Hold on. We got to bring in perspective, especially when you get to Greek culture. They had a god for almost everything. Anything that makes me feel good, I'm creating a god for so I can get it from that god. I'm going to tell you what, money is a very tempting god. I don't know about you, but I've felt the presence of that God in my life. How did I feel that presence? Where I'm fine and I'm good and I'm worshiping Yahweh, I'm loving my brother, my wife and I are getting along, then I take my bank account and it's negative. Okay. All right. I'm frustrated. I'm on the edge. And what happened? Yahweh didn't move. Yahshua, Jesus didn't move. What happened? Yeah, I know what happened. You got exposed because you were putting your confidence in something that you thought was Yahweh, but it really wasn't, because I took it away like I said I did with Job, and I saw what you did. Oh, I was so sober when that happened. I've grown in that area now. I'm like, I hate that. I'm like, no, you can do whatever. I'm still going to trust in him, still put my spirit in him. I'm not going to slaughter to this God. I'm not going to say I need just so much money and so much savings, and we need to. No, I'm not worshiping that God of 60-hour work weeks. I'm not worshiping that God as I need this much savings. I'm done. Negative, we'll be okay. We've been through that. So I need to bring this to 2016, because we can look through that and be like, oh, he says, I'm serious about, I will put you under the ban of destruction. I will put you, I don't deal with that. Yahweh sees it this way. He doesn't say, oh, you don't have the wooden God. He sees you should be coming to me as your rocks, your redeemer, your salvation, your comforter. What do I go to for comfort? Sometimes it's another person. You know, when my wife and I were in courtship, it was my wife. I'm not going to lie. I was like, oh, she's my comforter. Oh, I just so love talking to her and texting to her. She's like my God. And she used to say the same thing. He was my God. We had to repent of that. That's tough, and you see that going on a lot. Listen to the songs. I'm thinking you're talking about God the way I'm listening to this song. I love you forever. I do whatever. I'm like, whoa, praise Yahweh. What? Oh, no, this girl. I'm like, hold on. That has a place, but we're going too far with it. And I had to back up and say, that's not what he's talking about. That's not what we need to be doing. This is huge in this next one. 22, 23. Do not afflict any widow or fatherless. If you do, afflict them at all. If you do afflict them at all, watch out. If you're a widow and fatherless, whoa, man, he gets excited about it. He said, do not touch them. I didn't put all of it here. He says, my wrath shall burn, and I shall slay you with the sword. Your wives shall be, I'll cut it off. Man, but I get the idea. Do not mess with fatherless or widows. What James talks about it too, right? James 1:26. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to keep oneself from being polluted by the world and to look after orphans and widows in their distress. It keeps coming up. He is serious about these orphans and these widows, these fatherless children, the people who are powerless. Do not mess with them. He has laws of protection for the sojourner, the stranger that comes among you. Oh, you're a stranger. They're the Amalekites. They're the Egyptians. Who are they? Let's just keep them out to the corners. No. He says you better take care of them. There's laws for that. If you read the book of Ruth, and you got Noemi and whatnot, they're bringing in a Moabite woman, and they're taking care of her. What's his name? The guy's name? Boaz, taking care of this woman. And she don't know what – I love the story. She don't even know what she's doing. No, it's not yours, Mom. She don't even know what she's doing. She's trying to glean as the laws. I'm getting into something. But I love this because he's talking about protect them, and Boaz is living it out. That's why Boaz was I think Boaz and his, was it Noemi, in the lineage of the Messiah. But he was so righteous because she didn't know what she was doing. You were supposed to glean from the outside of a field what was left. This woman walking in the middle of the field just picking up the barrels as they put her down. And he says, don't embarrass her. He told the servants, don't embarrass her. Just act like you don't know what's going on. What a heart. What a heart of protecting that woman and not making her feel bad. What a heart said you can have what you need and not going to even say nothing about it. But he's protecting this to widowless. And she was a widow. If you remember the story, her husband had died. And he was from the tribe of Judah. And now she's coming back with, I think it was Ruth. Get the names mixed up. And that was 21 through 23. These were a lot of laws he was pulling out. And if we back up, we see he's serious about some things. Serious about not putting your hands on your brother. Serious about loving them. And then we see some things of restitution. We see that he's serious about not just saying I messed up, but making sure it's restored back to where it was and even more. Why do you think he got so excited about Zacchaeus? You remember with Zacchaeus? He found the Messiah. He says, man, to this day, anybody I've wronged, I give back to them. And how many times? I forget. 4 or 5 times more? He was like, I'll do even more than – I'm all about the restitution. Man, when I'm going to see that? At minimum, we'll barely say, I'm sorry, let alone give back, let alone give 2, 3, 4 times more. As you read through more scriptures, you'll see 20% is not uncommon to give more. 5 times more is not uncommon. Say, hey, I got to give more than what I did because I'm so serious about getting it right. And his response was, salvation has come to the house of this man. You get it. You get it. That's repentance. You can't fake that. You're giving up some stuff that's personal to you. So we see Yahweh's attitude. I just copied 24 here. I'm going to summarize it, though. So Yahweh said to Moses, I want you to come up now. And after he's talking about these laws, the 70 elders, I want you to come up. You ought to worship at a distance. But Moses is alone to approach Yahweh. I guess I'll go ahead and read it. The others must not come near, and the people may not come up with them. When Moses went and told the people all Yahweh's words and laws, they responded with one voice, everything Yahweh has said, we will do. Moses then wrote down everything Yahweh had said. He got up early the next morning, built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and set up 12 pillars representing 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls and fellowship offerings to Yahweh. Moses took half the blood and put it in bowls, and the other half he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, we will do everything Yahweh has said. We will obey. Moses then took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, this is the blood of the covenant that Yahweh has made with you, in accordance with all these words. Moses and Aaron, Nadab, and now watch this part right here. I thought this was interesting. Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw God of Israel. They did what? It says they went up and they saw the God of Israel. They went up and saw the God of Israel? Hold on. If someone sees God, this can't be right. Let me keep going. Under his feet. Oh, they're explaining it. They said under his feet. I was thinking now they didn't really see God. They said, no, under his feet was something like pavement of lapis lazuli. I had a friend of mine really get into that. He actually bought some from where's he from? Jeff, where'd he go? Afghanistan or somewhere? He bought a piece of lapis lazuli, and he was just loving it because he's like, I remember this is, it looked like this. They're trying to describe what they're seeing, lapis lazuli, as bright as the blue sky. But God did not raise his hand against these leaders of the Israelites. See, they understood that we're supposed to die. But he took note. We didn't die. We're still here. They saw God, and they ate and drank. Isn't that beautiful? Up to this point, you've seen God in fire. You've seen God as a powerful cloud or pillar. You've seen God part seas. You've seen God give manna. You've seen God do some powerful things. You've seen God talk about, I will kill you if you do this, and you will be punished if you do this. And now you see Yahweh there in front of them in all his glory. I don't know what it looked like, but you see something, and they're marveling at it that they're still alive. And watch this. They're in such a peace and presence that they're sitting eating before this. Can you imagine having some kind of communion with him right there in front of you? I love it. I love it because what that tells me is that in all of this, Yahweh wants to make himself personal to each one of us. You know, he doesn't want to be the God up there, the God over there. He wants to come and sit at your table and come eat with you. Eating is one of the most personal things we can do with someone. Matter of fact, it was tradition. When you made a covenant, you ate. It was like a sealing of the covenant. You sat down with somebody, you ate after these covenants you'll make as a practice. And it's not a surprise that this has been done. But before Yahweh, they ate and they drank. I love that. That's just and we're going to eat and drink in a little bit. We can kind of invite that scene and like, wow, what is that like? Can I ask you something? I was just but how informal that is. This is not. Excuse me, I'm just my elbows are on the table. It's not that. We're just eating and drinking. That's who our God looks like. That's who he is. That's who he wants to be for us. He wants to be, yeah, he is serious about some things. He's like, I don't do that, and I want you to love, but I want you to be close to me. Come here. I want to show you something. Moses, 70 elders. Come here. Sit down and eat. I don't even know if you got a blessing. You're already here. You just do your thing. Yahweh said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the law commandments, and I've written for their instruction. Then Moses set out with Joshua, his aide, and Moses went up to the mountain of God. He said to the others, wait for us until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you, and anyone involved in a dispute, they can go to them. We got Aaron down there to take care of it. When Moses went up to the mountain, the cloud covered it, and the glory of Yahweh settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the seventh day Yahweh called to Moses from within the cloud. To the Israelites, the glory of Yahweh looked like consuming fire on the top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went up the mountain, and he stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. I read this last part, and I'm reminded again that Yahweh is very personal. He's close, but he has expectation and he has boundaries that he wants us. He said for 6 days the cloud covered. The seventh day he said come. 2 days of sanctifying. The third day come. Like there's some waiting period. Like I just can't be like, oh, we're cool, it's okay, I'm just going to come out. Hey, I just had a question. No, you have to respect the fact that I am holy. I am set apart. I'm very loving, but I'm holy too. And that's the part for me. Maybe for some others it's not a big deal, but that's the part for me that challenged me the most is that, no, there's a holiness to me that you need to revere and you need to fear. And I'm not just, as a lot of people, actually, when I think about it, thinks that he's a homeboy and just, oh, he understands me and we're cool. Like, yeah, but you better understand him too. Because when we say he knows my heart, that's more true than I realize. He knows my heart. Yeah, he really does know that you're lazy and that you're really trying to get away around this. So he's clear about that. But anyhow, I'm closing by saying that who's the most misunderstood person in the Bible? I believe it may be Yahweh. But what have we learned? There's some things he hates so much that they're worthy of death. He desires restitution in the midst of a wrong, and he wants to reveal himself to you in the most intimate way. I hope that the practical that you're coming away with is the one that I came away with. When it comes to me restitution, if I've done something, I need to ask that second question. I need to say, will you forgive me? And then secondly, how can I make it right? That since I've been doing this, I've been trying to practice. I'm like, that's a really good one, because it says I'm willing to do whatever I can, brother, sister, to make this right. I want to walk in the understanding that Yahweh is in his understanding, not in my own understanding of what the culture says is right and wrong. He says, I'm serious about some things. You need to respect that. I know that you grew up this way. That doesn't make it right. I don't see things that way. So I'm going to constantly refresh my thinking as I'm in the Word reading and learning who he really is and lining myself up with him instead of lining him up with who I am. And lastly, I want to embrace the fact that he wants to reveal himself to me. He's not trying to be far off and distant. I may have had a childhood where I've had a parent, growing up. There was a time in my life when my dad he was with me. He didn't leave, but he wasn't always present, if you know what I mean. As I got into high school, I remember it was a particular event that happened. I got a chance to go to the science fair and compete. I had a project that I did, and I won city, I won state, I won district. I got a chance to compete internationally with people all around the world. So I got to travel to Philadelphia as a junior in high school to go there. And I remember a conversation Dad and I had, and he didn't know what was going on. He didn't even know until I got to like the international level that I had gone that far. And I kind of kept it to myself angrily and said, well, he don't really care. He's not going to really ask. And I remember years ago, he brought that up again because that was such a defining point in our relationship where he realized, okay, look, you're holding back from me. I'm like, you're holding back from me. You're not asking me. You don't care. You're doing what you want to do, and this whole thing. It would be easy for me to project that onto Yahweh and say, well, he's just somebody who tells me what to do, but he doesn't really want to get in my life. He doesn't really care about the little things, like what jeans I'm going to wear today. He doesn't really care about, I want to make a 80 on this test next. He's like, I don't care about all that. Just the big things I care about. But when I read the word again, I'm reminded, no, I do care. I want to sit down and eat with you. I want to sit down and love you. And that means a lot to me. So hopefully something there came out to you as well. My dad and I are doing great now, by the way. So I want to end with that. But that's it, guys. I love you. And hopefully that encourages you.